historical material which I have, what struck me, which I think you'll find interesting, is that today, your random Jewish kid or your random non-Jewish kid may not be overly thunderstruck by Sinai, Revelation Sinai. You might say, maybe yes, maybe no. Maybe it happened, maybe it didn't happen, maybe I'll choose to believe it, maybe I don't choose to believe it. There's more sort of distance, emotional distance. But I get the drift that in the Mediterranean area, it thundered. In other words, it had a high level of credibility that something extraordinary happened at Sinai along the lines of revelation from God. And therefore, whatever you may have been doing, whatever your parents might have done, or your grandparents, you don't want to be on the wrong side of history. And therefore, the Mediterranean populace is now receptive to a structure which embraces Sinai. The Jews will say, we already have this structure, it's us. And you have some Neo-Lubavitch missionaries at that time, and Neo-Lubavitch proselytizing. The Jews generally not proselytized, but apparently there were some Pharisees which were proselytizing.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Right.
No question.
Now, at the same time, there are other...
They must have been, because there was Roman law against it during the second century.
Right. Right. So the invisible elephant in the room is that Sinai was in the room. The Sinai elephant was in the room. And how do we take it from here? So the Jews say, look, this is the deal. We're the originators. We're the original. And this is how we do it. And if you're Jewish, you better follow it. And if you're not Jewish, you want to be Jewish, this is the deal.
And this becomes an existential threat to many Christians. This is not simply a question of cultural identity. That can be fraught enough.
Right.
But let's say there's a Christian living in Corinth. His background is as an idolater.
Right.
His way into monotheism is to be baptized into the name of Jesus.
Right.
He's baptized into the name of Jesus.
Right.
What happens in Corinth when there is a civic festival and all of the Roman subjects are required to offer incense to the emperor and pour out wine before his image and to swear allegiance to him as God's son? He says, I can't do that. But those who actually have the civic right not to do that, namely the Jews, are in a position to say, well, no, as a matter of fact, he's not one of us. Doesn't belong to God. So that the beginning of the Roman persecution of Gentile Christians was an event that actually made this whole confrontation toxic in a way that had not been before, because it was life and death for many people who were persecuted.
I think also that, as happens interpersonally and between groups and countries, fear of a perceived threat can cause cataclysm. So one can conjecture that the Christian leadership viewed the Jews' ongoing threat to the legitimacy of Christianity. And therefore, one has to demonize the Jews, to put it in broad strokes. But probably empirically, the Christians will do what they want, irrespective of the Jews, most probably. And the Jews had no intention of going after the Christians as long as the Christians left them alone, most probably, as a general rule. But the fear of the leadership that the Jews would intellectually attack the legitimacy of Christianity, which they may have done in synagogue and in their internal seminars, led to a whole-scale program almost to undermine the Jews. And once the program got started by a supermajority, which became a supermajority religion, it sort of fettered itself. And as we know to this day, whenever you demonize any minority, it's politically powerful to your masses, to your masses. It just plays well, status-wise. If you are, in the masses of whatever religion, and the leadership is demonizing another religion, which might perceive itself as elite, and you can pull them down, your masses will be quite happy. And I'm not saying masses derogatorily. I mean your masses. So you have status issues playing into this heavily also. So meaning, odds are, without the demonization, Christianity would have flourished and flowered quite well. And not only that, if the major thrust of Christianity is love thy neighbor, along those humanistic, so we're humanistic, But that was not the path taken. The path taken was a dualistic path. We're good, they're evil, and we're humanistic, but not towards the Jews. So, and it's that sort of pivot which has led to destruction, as we know, ongoing destructions today. And once you let the genie out of the bottle, any demagogue can pick up on it, and play with it, and excite their masses.
Well, isn't this, even ancient religions have some notion of duality, polarity, this light and this dark, this good and this evil. There has to be a counter to everything. Right.
And that's playing well with the Mediterranean neo-pagan or neo-Gnostic community.
But also Qumran is an example of that, where the people of Qumran produced the Dead Sea Scrolls could say that they were the sons of light.
Right.
And everyone else, including Jews who didn't belong to them, were the sons of darkness. So the principle that you can demonize the other is strangely energizing. It produces a kind of the equivalent of adrenaline in societies. And it seems to me that the ancient societies saw this as being normal. The idea that you had to transcend this is relatively recent. It truly is the blessing of the Enlightenment that you could.
Well, maybe it's maybe 21st century Enlightenment.
Well, even from the 18th century, this extraordinary the idea that the French Revolution could say, as a matter of course, Jews are citizens.
Eventually.
That's not immediately. The fact that they could do that is a remarkable breakthrough, and without its Enlightenment background, it would not have occurred.
The Enlightenment saying, I disagree with what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it.
Of Europe. So
I think you also have an issue. One of my axioms is that all power elites eventually abuse their power. Jewish, Christian, Russian, Tengan, Yigan. It's almost a law of the universe. Power elites eventually overplay their hand. And the power elite happen to be the Christian hierarchy, and they play their hand with vengeance to consolidate and enhance their power. And one has to really differentiate between the power elite and the group listening. The group listening, Christianity wants a paradigm for life, wants a philosophical structure for life. They're not inherently born and say, let's kill the Jews, But if the Jews are demonized in the New Testament subliminally, 5 and 10, 15 directionally, so that it gets ingrained in the culture, then the group itself gets unwittingly co-opted, into this program. That's why my book is not directed towards the Christian power hierarchy. I view it as a lost cause. My book is directed towards the Christian laity and the Christian academic community, as opposed to the power structure, the clerical power structure, which I view like most clerical power structures will try to consolidate, defend, and enhance its power.
Except that in this case, I have to give credit to the magisterium of the Catholic Church in doing what it can to correct some of its words. excesses, and to the life of scholarship which has contributed to this question of early Christian anti-Semitism for better than 200 years. Again, it's part of an Enlightenment. I was asked a few years ago to write an article on Jesus in relation to Judaism. And I was struck as I went back and looked at earlier contributors to this issue that in fact we've been at it for as long as we were talking about an Enlightenment. I think that we have the possibility of productive change. I'll tell you, this past summer, for the first time, I visited Berlin. Now, I had previously been to Jerusalem, where I always expect to be moved, and to Paris, where I'm very happy whether or not I'm moved. But when I went to Berlin, I thought it would be interesting. I went because I had a conference. But I was astonished by the way in which, with the fall of the wall in Berlin, there was not only the end of the Cold War, which that was how I always thought of it. It was also the end of the Second World War. And with the end of the Second World War, there was also a palpable memory in Berlin of what happened, of why it happened, of what the policies were towards Jews and Gypsies and homosexuals. It's not just that the memorials are there, it's the way that they're treated, that people can be filled with energy and yet also bear the weight of history. And to my mind, that's the vocation of Christians now, to be able to own their responsibility, and yet in doing so, not simply to become weighted down with guilt, but to act differently.
I think the work of the Christian academics on this related subject is just astounding and remarkable. I was just almost dumbfounded by the vibrancy of the work. And some of the key works on the subject, some of the very key works and the most dynamic works are from Christian academics. And I was just frankly stunned by it. And they have to be courageous, number one, and there's no question that the humanism emanating from it is extraordinary. The work cannot be done alone, for sure. And there's no question that when a Christian academic writes a book on the subject, which is redemptive towards the Jewish position,